So let's get started. Some of you may know that the Downtown Partnership, in addition to our work in membership and advocacy, is also an essential public service provider. As the managing organization for a special district charged with keeping the 275 blocks of downtown neighborhoods clean, safe, and thriving with enhanced services, we have a unique understanding of the impacts of COVID-19 in our communities. Since the beginning of this crisis, our team of maintenance and safety ambassadors and homeless outreach coordinators on our Clean and Safe team have been on the ground safely continuing their work, serving as extra sets of eyes, ears, and helping hands for residents, businesses, and property owners. We know from their experience that the public safety needs of our neighborhoods, especially in downtown, have shifted to accommodate this temporary new normal. Today's discussion will focus on how public safety has adapted and collaborated to best serve neighborhoods in response to COVID-19, and the changes that have been made for safe continuation of services through our court systems. To kick us off today, I have the pleasure of welcoming our very own San Diego County District Attorney, Summer Stephan. With that, Summer, thank you very much for being here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you, Downtown Partnership. I know of all the good work you do, and I've had a chance to live versus virtual come in and find out everything good that you're doing. This is another opportunity in this very unique, unprecedented time in our history. So there's no manual or handbook for this. I think Chief Nisleit will agree with me. We've never faced anything like this. We've had fires where the courts have been shut down, but for a short period of time. But now we have this pandemic that essentially affects all our operations, everything from internally, our employees, to externally, how we serve victims of crime and how we prosecute cases and hold people accountable. So that's a complete shift because the criminal justice system is based in courtroom, in being there live with the judge and the jury and the courtroom. We've had to rethink how we continue. And even though as of March 17, the courts to the public might have appeared closed, in fact, that's really far from the truth. The courts have been alive and open. We conducted over 600 criminal arraignments and hundreds of preliminary examinations, and have conducted multiple other hearings, but we have done all of those using remote technology, which we had to develop in collaboration with Chief Nisleit, Sheriff Gore, and our other law enforcement partners with the courts and with the public defender, almost overnight, taking what we had and building upon it and creating privacy and guarding for communication between a defense attorney and their client, private lines, in order to preserve due process, but yet be sure that we don't have a release of a dangerous criminal because we didn't meet the timeline. So that's been one of the big things that has kept me up at night, is looking at cases coming up on a clock that was sticking for a preliminary examination when the solution constitutionally was a release and a dismissal. That wasn't an option for us. So we went to bat, writing to the Chief Justice and the governor to allow for the same technology that we use for everything to be used for courtrooms. And we got a lot of our wishes granted, but we had to really be very mindful of how we execute those new ways of doing business. With that, I'm proud to say that we have not allowed any timeline to pass where any violent or serious offender was released because we couldn't meet the timelines that were required. On May 26th, the court is expected to open, but again, that opening is not the way you think about opening, meaning the front doors aren't going to be swung open for the public to come in. However, more and more of the services that the court normally conducts will be managed somehow. I know one of the questions dealt with whether detainers and evictions will be handled. all kind of civil matters, you'll be allowed to file your paperwork for it. Whether and when a judge will hear it in the priority of things that are backed up, I can't speak to. But at least there'll be a method by which paperwork and claims and different things can be filed with the court. Currently, because of the dramatic consequences of not meeting criminal justice timelines, the focus has been on criminal justice and on being able to conduct arraignments, preliminary examinations, with the next big challenge being jury trials. The reason we've been able to do all of this remotely is because we don't need constitutionally the right to confrontation, like a face-to-face meetup has been reserved for jury trials. And it's much harder to find a workaround once we get to jury trials. How do we have those while protecting the safety of jurors? How do you rearrange a courtroom where jurors, whoever has been called for jury duty, isn't sitting shoulder to shoulder with other jurors, but allows for that reorganization for the 6-foot distance? How do you have witnesses testify with a mask on if the jury is supposed to judge their credibility, their expressions, their manner? There are many challenges and obstacles coming up. We're hopeful that the first jury trial is supposed to begin June 15. We are hopeful that that's gonna continue. There's a request for the Chief Justice to grant another 30 days to allow for more plexiglass, more preparations, more protections for jurors. Now we just started thermometers entering the courthouse, which is one step definitely in the right direction, but there's a lot more to work on to make sure that that courtroom is safe for everybody so that they can focus on the business at hand. When I look at what trials we have coming up, many of these cases are not cases that you can give a lower offer, or we have done some of that where we try to look at what is a good result without having to bring people to court. But some of these are very major murders and high profile cases, and we want to make sure that we still balance that public safety with public health. Some of the other kind of points that I want to make is other than the court and the court system, which we have somehow figured out, is being able to collaborate on justice with law enforcement during this time. And what's been really difficult is victims of crime, sometimes, especially victims of domestic violence, human trafficking, child exploitation, and elder abuse. These were victims that were already hard to reach. They were victims that kind of hid in the shadows, and they never are the ones that are very comfortable calling because the abuser is often known to them. Now you have them behind closed doors, and they are even concerned about whether we are available for a call. And we want to make sure that everybody knows that we're on duty. We're an essential service. Our victim services, who served 12,000 victims in the past, are still available and have done a workaround where they can talk to victims any time of day or night when they can get away from their abuser to be able to discuss it with us. And one other big trend that has unfortunately emerged, that associations and partnerships like you can put the word out, is all of the COVID scams. You know, unfortunately, crisis brings out the best of us, and we have seen that in our heroic law enforcement and health workers and volunteers, but they also can bring out the worst in some. Today's scam is knowing that the county is working on tracing. So if somebody tests positive, they trace who that person came in contact with. The newest scam is to send you a text or an email and say you have been identified as someone that was traced to have come in contact with a positive COVID case. Click on this link to get more information. So naturally, that looks official. You know, scammers have become very good at imitating the real thing. Don't click on anything because it ends up being malware where then there's a ransom to release your computer, which won't happen. Money is lost and time is lost. Economic impact checks, that's another area for scams where they're going after these economic impact checks by pretending to be the IRS, needing your social security, private information. Don't click on anything. Don't answer anything. Don't give out any information. Just hang up, then call the official business government agency that is supposed to be the one that was contacting you in order to get the right information. And we have a lot of information on SanDiegoDA.com, a lot of resources special for the COVID on scams, on phishing scams, on also domestic violence, hate crimes, human trafficking. Everything that we're seeing is an issue, a public safety issue right now. So I'll stop here and kind of maybe add as the questions come.
Great. Thank you so much, DA Stephan. And I know you lead one of the largest DA offices in the nation, and I think second largest in California with 1,000 employees and serving all of the residents of San Diego County. So I'm looking forward to the questions as well. With that, I'd like to introduce the San Diego Police Chief, David Nisleit. Chief Nisleit was promoted as the City of San Diego's 35th Chief of Police in March of 2018. Incidentally, I think we started on the same very first day and we spent our first day together.
Yes.
He oversees the 8th largest police department in the nation. He's a native San Diegan, and under his direction, our teams have had a close working relationship with SDPD. It is my pleasure to introduce Chief Nisleit.
Good afternoon, Betsy. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. And good afternoon to everybody else, and to Summer and to Alonso. And you know what Summer was saying, there is not a playbook for us during this time. You know, when this hit us in March, looking at how we are going to operate as a police department, we had to take a lot of different things into consideration. And one thing that I did along with my staff, making considerations on how we're going to respond, is we're still very much open for business. You know, crisis like this, infectious disease, is not new to law enforcement. It's something that we deal with in an environment all the time. This just happens to be a new one. And so, you know, learning to work in that, learning to work with our partners, both on the state, the local, and the Fed side during all this. But the main thing is we still need to respond to calls for service. And, you know, I'm very happy to say that we really have not really seen an increase in crime across the board. We are seeing a little bit more people in possession of firearms that we've been taking into custody. We've definitely seen an increase in fentanyl overdose. But what I'm concerned about, something that Summer was just talking about, is our domestic violence, our child abuse and stuff like that. It does not show to be increasing, but is that a true, you know, a true sign of it, really what's going on? Is because we know that people don't have access maybe to calling the police right now because their abuser is with them. Then the kids aren't going to school and they're seeing teachers and counselors that might see a change in the child's behavior or visible injuries, and then that gets reported to us. So we are concerned about those type of crimes being very generally unreported right now. And so something that we're trying to keep track of, and it's something that I look at weekly. But, you know, we're doing very, very well. You know, San Diego Police Department has been impacted by COVID. You know, we've had 12 officers test positive for COVID. I still have 3 officers out of work, and some have been very impacted and become very, very sick. And so, like I said, I still have 3 out as we speak right now, but we're still out. You know, the courts and jail, it's a little bit different of putting people into jail, but right now we still have a great relationship with the DA's office, State Attorney's office, and all of our partners on addressing crime as it comes up. And, you know, we're happening to address new things that we're seeing, like scams, like Summer was talking about, and also being mindful of those and how that impacts us and how that impacts some of our community. The elderly, for instance, are getting impacted by some of these scams, and the best advice that we can give them, and make certain that we're here as a means of passing out information. And then the whole stay-at-home order of going through the different phases and how we address that, and from enforcement to education to cooperation to being proactive and actually going out and talking to businesses the first night that they were closed, and really kind of giving guidance to that. So that's not something that we normally do. But that's what we're doing now, is really looking at the stay-at-home order and being consistent, not just consistent amongst our divisions, but being consistent along the county with law enforcement. So I talked to Sheriff Gore, I talked to the chiefs, of surrounding cities, to make certain that we are being consistent with how we're enforcing the stay-at-home order, how we're looking at protests, because that's another very interesting topic of protests during this time. Does the stay-at-home order supersede the First Amendment, or so we don't know. I mean, to us, we're just kind of staying the same on how we address protests, and that's if they're peaceful. We allow people to express their First Amendment, people to express their frustration with different things. And so that's kind of how we've been doing it. And, it's just very interesting times, but, when we all look back at this, there's opportunities also to grow and to learn and build relationships and learn different ways to communicate with our communities, social media during Zoom and different things like that. And, just on the phone a lot, talking to community leaders, making certain they understand we're still here. I know Summer does that. I know Sheriff Gore does that. It's just making certain that everybody knows that we're still readily available to anybody, doesn't matter time, day or night, or on weekends. So that's really it for us. And, I'm looking forward to questions, and it's good to see some familiar faces, even though it's via Zoom. So.
Thank you so much, Chief Nisleit. Yes, I just want to commend you and all of your team, that you're so communicative, and so is DA Stephan's team. We have the opportunity to interact quite a bit with both offices, and very, very appreciative of the relationships that we have. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
And with that, we're going to turn to Alonso Vivas. He's the Executive Director of the Downtown San Diego Partnerships Clean and Safe program. Alonso has been with the Clean and Safe team for 14 years and is part of the team observing how the needs of downtown neighborhoods are evolving day in and day out. With that, Alonso.
Hi, good afternoon, Betsy. It's a pleasure being here, and it's an honor to be here with District Attorney Suppers and Chief Nisleit. So what I like to do is, provide an overview of our program, but then also talk a little bit about our history, relations to public safety, and then also some of the trends that we've been seeing. So with that, I just have a short slide that I'd like to share with everyone. So the downtown community is made up of about 2.3 square miles. It's about 1,450 acres, of which there's approximately 7 neighborhoods, which also include the Port Tide Lines. Out of that entire area, the Downtown San Diego Partnership, through the Property Business Improvement District, is responsible for 275 blocks, 6 neighborhoods, and 1 special commercial enhancement district. All in all, the Property Business Improvement District represents over 11,000 property owners and over 13,000 distinct parcels. So this entire area that you have in front of you is the area within PBIT that we provide 24 hours, 7 days type of services, of which it's about 128 individuals that make up this entire district. And that's everything from our pressure washing team, to our security team, to our maintenance team, to our maintenance ambassadors, and our homeless outreach team as well. All these efforts are managed by 2 individuals that I just want to make sure I take the time to recognize. Ernesto Romo and Danny Garcia lead a lot of our operational efforts. And, what I always tell folks, with COVID and everything going on, we're still out there. And one of the main things that we wanted to touch on to let the community to know that, right now, the main concern is getting businesses up and running, right? And the reopening of San Diego. And we wanted to reassure the community, whether it's a small business owner, whether it's a large Class A building, or whether it's a residential community, that we're still out there providing these essential services. And that the last thing we want folks to worry about or think about is whether we're out there. And yes, we're absolutely out there as a partnership on the leadership we have taken additional steps to make sure that our services continue. And I'll touch a little bit more on those as well. So I also wanted to provide just our general statistics that we've had historically. One of the things that we do is we collect all the data from our safety ambassadors that are out in the field. So from a public safety standpoint, from the data that we collect, generally this is our FY20 numbers, about 147,000 security checks, over 63,000 welfare checks, over 9,000 contacts for directional assistance, and over 42,000 business visits throughout the downtown area. We'll go to the next slide. So part of what I wanted to talk about as well is just some of the trends that we're seeing, right? I think it's fair to say that at least within our office, we definitely have seen an uptick in different types of complaints and service requests as they're related to encampments and drug activity. But what is also very interesting is on the flip side, we've also seen a reduction on logs for specific types of services. One of them being SDPD calls. We actually have seen a reduction on SDPD calls, but still obviously contacting the San Diego Police Department as needed. Last month we contacted 123 times for a grand total of 1,229 times in the last 6 months. So as you guys can see, we're still very much in contact with the San Diego Police Department. These are just the non-emergency calls that our security folks make. We're also in contact on the leadership side and also via email with service requests from community members. So go to the next slide. Trespassing is another trend that we report and that we also address. So we work very closely with the San Diego Police Department. We work directly with property owners, and we try to serve as a liaison between the property owner and the San Diego Police Department. And what we try to do is we engage with the property owners and have them fill out a letter of agency on file. The letter of agency on file is located on the city's San Diego Police Department website. And what we do is we educate property owners about the letter of agency on file and why it's so important to us and also for community members, because it allows us to talk to individuals who are inside patios and engage with them and offer them services, and also work with the San Diego Police Department if we need their assistance. So as you can see, while there has been a decrease in trespassing calls, that's still something that we're very busy working on. And another thing that's really important to our program that I think a lot of people don't know is we do welfare checks. So welfare checks is essentially our team either proactively engaging with individuals who are maybe laying on the sidewalk, or a call from a community member who wants us to check in on individuals. And essentially what ends up happening is our trained safety ambassadors will go to a call or stop an individual who's laying on the sidewalk and start to have a conversation with that person. And throughout that conversation, part of what we ask is if the person's okay. Are they okay? Do they need medical attention? Do they know about the resources that are available? Do they know about the convention center? Do they know where the public restroom is? Do they know where to grab lunch? If within that welfare check and that conversation, there is a need for additional assistance, we do have our homeless outreach team, which I'll talk to a little bit, that we can do a referral to as well. So we'll go to the next slide. So part of what we've been doing since 2012 as an organization is conducting a unsheltered homeless count for the entire downtown area. This is something that we've been doing since 2012 every month. And just a little fact, the last Thursday of every month is when we conduct our homeless count. So the blue graph that's in front of you, that's the count, and that is the average for every year since 2012 to 2020. And another fact, our last count that we conducted in April, we had 565 individuals that we counted throughout the downtown area. And just to note, this is within just the PBID area of the 275 blocks. And then the red line you'll see is our family reunification program, in which we service individuals who want to reconnect with their support system. So we'll go to the next slide. So something I really wanted to talk through a little bit is just our homeless outreach efforts. I know that's something that a lot of community members either email us or call us or have just general questions about. Is we have a team of 8 homeless outreach individuals. They're all assigned to essentially different things. However, the ultimate goal is to finally get individuals into permanent housing, right? Whether it's here locally in San Diego or it's outside of the San Diego area. Part of their efforts are always going to be building relationships with individuals. You know, it might take just one time for us to talk to an individual to finally convince them to get into some type of service. Sometimes it can take 50, 20, 30 times. Every single person is very unique. Every single person is very different. So I just want to give a shout out to Ketra Carter and her efforts and her team. Since April 11th to May 8th, they have distributed over 5,600 meals, almost 1,500 bottles of water, and over 400 face coverings they passed out for homeless individuals. And this number is set to increase as we're having folks reach out to us and actually want to make donations. Because one of the things that folks are concerned about is they want to make sure that, you know, as they're walking around the community, that folks that are unsheltered have proper equipment and face coverings when they're out in the community. So those are efforts that we're doing collectively with other service providers and along with the City of San Diego, RTFH, and the Housing Commission as well. So general maintenance is, you know, we consider something that's very much something that has to do with public safety, right? Perception is very important for our downtown and I think for everyone. And when folks are walking around the neighborhood, not only do we need to make sure that things are clean and that things are safe, but that graffiti is taken care of. It's those type of things that if it's not taken care of in a timely manner, you will get more of that. In March, we actually had an increase in graffiti, and we took some efforts in working with Sean Warner with our placemaking department, and he led an effort, which we'll go to the next slide right now so you guys can see the image. But what we did is we took a lot of the vacant storefronts that are throughout downtown, and we partnered up with the Gaslamp Quarter Association and in partnership with Vandar and other artists, we end up putting murals. And I hate to do this, but if we can go back to the previous slide, you'll see that those efforts actually saw, we actually saw a reduction in the graffiti based on those efforts. So it was kind of a win-win for the community because, you know, right now, a lot of individuals are at home and, you know, essentially walking around downtown, right, is one of the few things they can do. So we wanted to make sure that not only was the graffiti taken care of, but as they're walking around, they got to saw some beautiful art throughout downtown. So we'll go to the next slide. And kind of on the last note, I want to make sure that folks are aware, as I said in the beginning, we are still out there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We actually added security patrol. We've been working with the San Diego Police Department to make sure that we can collaborate and also help their efforts as well. And we actually did not have a graveyard patrol for security throughout the downtown area before COVID. And when we had the crisis, we ended up recognizing that with a lot of the shops being closed, it was important for us to be out there checking on some of these shops that are closed, but then not only actively patrolling there, but also making ourselves available if somebody wants to engage and check on their business. So there are many methods that you can reach out to us. You can call us on 234-8900, which the number is on the screen. You could also text us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 619-414-2698. That number goes straight to a supervisor and you're able to create images and send pictures. Or if you'd like to email us, you can also email us at info@improvedtsd.org. And if you want to learn more about the program, please feel free to go to our Downtown San Diego Partnership website. So with that, thank you, Betsy, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much. So now we will go into the question part, and I'll let you know who I'm going to call on so that you can unmute yourself and get ready to answer the questions. We're going to start our first question with the DA, with DA Stephan. And you answered this a little bit, but there's some additional questions on this. Cynthia in particular asks, when will police and detectives be able to obtain warrants? My neighbors and I have been enduring a gambling den across the street. People come day and night. Detectives say they need the warrants from the courts, which are closed.
They can get the warrants. Chief Nisleit can speak to this. I think they're prioritizing because of the reduced kind of resources with the court and availability, but there is still the ability to get a warrant from a duty judge. And of course, they're kind of, because there's less duty judges, they're trying to get to the violent crime, but this kind of activity can really ruin a sense of safety and security. So the detectives maybe, sometimes they can't answer the question fully. In just not speaking about this case, but in general, they could be investigating and gathering enough evidence to put in a warrant, because it requires quite a bit of probable cause, and they're doing all of that, but they can't actually even tell the person who is the caller or the complainer, because they don't want to jeopardize the investigation. So I wouldn't assume, I would always assume that the officers with Chief Nisleit can add to this, are working on the issues, but it's just taking a little bit more time. But the courts are receiving warrants.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback on what the district attorney is saying, and absolutely, we are still serving search warrants. In fact, we just served one last Friday that had kind of a child abuse nexus to it. So still very much open. Sometimes we don't move at the speed that some of the community wants us to, but as the district attorney was saying, sometimes it's painstakingly slow for us to gather all the evidence that we would need to put into the body of a search warrant to convince a judge to grant the warrant. And so a lot of times we need to talk to witnesses, we need to do some surveillance, and it takes time. And so, you know, maybe offline, if that person wants to give me the address that they're concerned about, it's something I can definitely pass along. But very much assured, our narcotics unit, our vice detail, everybody else is still very much fully staffed and very much fully operating pre-pandemic. Again, we're still serving warrants both for SWAT, narcotics, homicide, all that different stuff we're still doing.
Great, thank you very much. And I know you both have been you talked a little bit about child abuse and maybe other abuse cases. And I know you've both have been very active in child trafficking, sex trafficking area as well. I wasn't sure if maybe you wanted to speak to trends in that regard during the pandemic.
There's definitely really bad trends we're seeing. We sadly have a homicide that is human trafficking related that is under investigation right now, a very, very ugly case. We have 14 for investigation with a 14, 15, and a 17-year-old that decided to run away from home, essentially on this deceptive lure by somebody posing that they've got some alcohol and a party and it's harmless, and because these kids are, you know, not in school and maybe the parent is working. I don't want to give up too much detail, but they run away and right into the arms of traffickers who are essentially just there to make money off of them, to sell them for sex. And once these kids are trapped in that situation, they don't know what to do, so they just comply because they want to survive. So this is of great concern. Before, our target with Chief Nisleit and the Human Trafficking Task Force was hotels and motels, but we're seeing a trend of converted kind of garages where they're using a garage for this illicit activity. So instead of a hotel room for prostitution, a garage, car dates they're using in remote areas. All of these things put less eyes on people who have been trained to detect activity of human trafficking. So it's of great concern. And then our ICAC division, which the sergeant from San Diego Police Department, with the support of Chief Nisleit, is reporting that the numbers for child exploitation reports have gone from what normally would be under 300 to almost 800 in the month of April. This trend is matched nationally with the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children, also showing a tripling of child exploitation at about 4 million reports. Mind you, what these reports represent, these are the automatic technology reports that come from the technology platform having to report when they see child pornography or other images. So there's an explosion of homemade movies that exploit children and other things. Unfortunately, a lot of our victims live with their abusers. So, and in a time of a stay-at-home order, as much as there's wisdom to that, it does give us sleepless nights, the chief and I, thinking about victims being trapped in that situation.
Yeah, also just to continue that follow-up, we've also seen it between our vice section and our membership on the Human Trafficking Task Force. We've definitely seen an increase in that in the different pimping cases that we've been involved in very tragic cases. But on some side of the victory, we've also had a lot of rescues, what we would call recoveries. So I can't give a lot of details on that either because these are still very much open cases. But we're doing some great work in that area with the help of the district attorney's office of really going out and rescuing some of these young women that have been put in these positions of being trafficked. And so it's something that, you know, there are avenues that are kind of closed, but we're looking at different avenues to open up to be able to identify those that are being victimized and then going out and rescuing them.
Thank you both. We're going to go to an eviction question next, and it may be too specific, but if you want to answer it in a more broad term. But Alma asks about eviction process that were started before the moratorium. Are those able to proceed? She seems to be having trouble getting her eviction to proceed.
So this is not my area of expertise. That's civil law. I don't do those, but I can tell you that this is the courts were not even accepting these actions. On May 26th, those actions can be filed, but it doesn't mean they will be prioritized. But also there's been a lot of conflicting rules and information. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court issued an order that judges are not to sign off on eviction orders during this emergency. And so the way the order is written, it doesn't specifically kind of say whether if it started before, it's an exception, and if it started now, it's a different situation. So there's a lot of conflicting rules, and the City of San Diego Council has issued some rules. The sheriff recently had decided that because of all of these different conflicting messages, that they're not going to actually serve the eviction notices right at this moment. So this is a tough time for landlords because of all the different conflicting messages and orders out there.
Thank you. This next question is actually maybe directed towards Alonso, but other people might have some information too. But the condition of downtown's public spaces and sidewalks are not sanitary, and what is being done to address this issue?
Really great question. You know, one of the things I think we've noticed with COVID a couple of months ago, with a lot of folks being home, that ended up translating for us into a lot more doggy stations actually being maintained. So we've actually been refilling a lot of these doggy stations because we're noticing there's more pet waste out in the general public. That's one. Two, a lot of the general public spaces that are available for our unsheltered population, right? Like parks have been virtually closed. The library has been virtually closed. The day center's capacity has reduced. So there's been a lot of just different factors that have allowed for more people to leave more trash in the general public right away. So part of what we done actually about a couple weeks ago was we just got our PBID budget approved by our board of directors, and it'll be going to the city council pretty soon. And within our FY21 budget, which is soon to start on July 1st, we actually are going to be increasing some of these services that are going to help with some of these type of concerns from community members, because those are things that I think generally folks want to see more of, right? I think folks want to see more trash being collected. Folks want to see more pressure washing being done. And those are things that are going to be reflected in FY21 budget. The other thing I will say, data for us is very important. So if you are noticing a trend in your specific side of the neighborhood, please let us know. Text us, call us, email us, and what we'll do is we'll turn your zone, your area into a hotspot. And what that's going to do for us, it's going to allow for us to increase our services in that specific area. The other thing that I would say, and kudos to Chief and his team, we work really closely with Central Division and neighborhood policing. So the other thing that's really, really helpful is using the Get It Done app. So what the Get It Done app is going to do is it's going to do two things. It's going to route your service request to the right agency. So if it's, let's say, an area for environmental services, they will be working in conjunction with the San Diego Police Department's neighborhood policing unit if they deem that it's needed. So yes, so short is yes, we've noticed an increase as well in certain neighborhoods, and we are adjusting our services and getting more folks out into the street and cleaning these areas. And we've actually been adjusting our pressure washing schedule as well. So we are very much on top of it and increasing our efforts.
Great, thank you. This next question is for Chief Nisleit, and Jennifer and Marcella have asked this question. And I know you've been enforcing specific parking enforcement all along, but when will street parking at meters start being enforced throughout the city?
So that's a conversation that we're going to have with the city council and everybody. But my understanding is that we'll go back to a full parking enforcement mode once the stay-at-home order has been lifted. So right now we are treating it as holiday hours. So meaning that we're really only enforcing red, white, and blue. So red curbs, obviously white, which is the loading, and then the blue is handicap. Those are the only things we're enforcing as we speak right now.
And I'm sure they're not suggesting that you need to hurry up, but I think they wanted to just know the information. So we appreciate that.
And we'll make certain that we put that out to the public through social media and a press release that when we start enforcing it, so we don't catch people off guard. Great,
thank you so much. We did have a question about child custody matters from Sylvia. It doesn't really get into more than that, but it could be the timing that DA Stephan already talked about with the courts. I'm not sure if there's more to the child custody matters.
No, yeah, go ahead, Summer.
Oh, sorry, it's the same that May 26th, the court is going to be at least accepting paperwork for more proceedings. When they set those hearings, we don't know, but hearings that are like restraining orders, things that safeguard life, those are going through. There's always a duty judge doing those. So, and if there's something like a child abduction where somebody's not abiding by whatever the custody agreement is, and the child is unknown where their whereabouts are, and the other parent is suspected or someone is suspected, that's obviously something that needs to be reported and would be a higher priority. I don't know.
Great.
If Chief,
Chief, do you have something to add to that? Okay.
Yeah,
so
go ahead. So basically, if for the question is if there is concerns or there's a child custody issue, it's still, especially if it's pressing, you call 911. If not, you call our non-emergency number. We will still come out. We will look at the different court orders, or if we need to write a court or write a report, we will also do that. But then it falls back to the courts.
All right. I know we've had more than 100 participants on here today. So if anybody else has questions, please, a reminder to put them in the Q&A and we will get to them in the queue. Another question came up from Elizabeth about the convention center. And that question was, is there a transition plan? There's quite a few unsheltered people being served at the convention center. Is there a transition plan and timeline for housing for the folks there?
Great question. So yes, there is a transition plan. Right now, there's approximately 1,200 folks that are being sheltered at the convention center and getting full wraparound services. I don't have a date on that right now. What we're really looking at is what we would call positive exits and getting those folks into more permanent housing from the convention center, and then obviously screening people for medical and all the other different services that they might need. But as far as an exit date at this time, I don't have one right now. It's something that I get briefed on weekly. And, you know, I have one member of my team that's over there, and that's Captain Scott Wall from Neighborhood Policing, very heavily involved in there as others from the city of San Diego. So as soon as they have an exit plan, they already have it, but as soon as actual date comes out, we'll get that out there.
Great, thank you for that. I think we'll go to wrap-up comments. I want to be respectful of all of your time. We know how very busy you are serving all of the people of San Diego. So I'm going to start with Alonso on just a minute or two on where you are right now and wrapping up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, once again, thank you, Betsy, for allowing me to participate. So I would just end with saying this. As I said in the beginning, our team is still very much out there providing very essential services to community members. And we are a text and a phone call away. If you have any concerns, any suggestions about our services, let's say you're not quite happy about our services, or you just want to have a conversation about our services, you want to maybe have some feedback and have a more thorough conversation, please email us at info@improveddtsd.org. That email actually goes directly to me, our operations team, and our supervisors. And it is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And what it'll do is it'll allow for us to really be able to adjust our services, right? Because we want to make sure that if we can make improvements, which there's always going to be room for improvement in these type of services that we have, that we're doing so. And we want to make sure that we're very much accessible to the community, because you know, we actually see service requests and we see emails and texts is actually a very positive thing for us, because while yes, we have, you know, over 120 employees throughout downtown, you know, it's still a very large footprint, right? We're one of the largest property business improvement districts in the entire country. So it's over 1,100 sidewalks that we cover. And the data that we get from community members and the feedback that we get is very, very crucial and important to our day-to-day services. So please reach out to us. We want to make sure that you guys know that we're out there and providing very important work for everyone and creating a very walkable and clean and safe downtown San Diego.
We can go to DA Stephan for wrap-up comments, and then we'll end with Chief Nisleit.
Great. Well, it's been great to be with you. I just want to give a shout out to my team, which are 1,000 employees across the county of San Diego that are continuing every day to serve victims like the chief. I've had 2 employees that have suffered from COVID, one in the hospital that was released, and it's a real worry, but we want to fulfill our mission no matter what. We want to be there, so we want to make sure that people know that they can go on SanDiegoDA.com. They can call our victim services if they just want advice on where to go, where the resources are of any kind to escape abuse and exploitation, to find help, reporting scams, any price gouging, anything that you are concerned about. And that we work closely with Chief Nisleit. We're blessed to have such an incredible law enforcement here. I saw a question about the zero bail, and that is of concern. I mean, we have some very serious cases that now qualify for zero bail. Our office fought a battle in the appellate court, and we won that battle in that the court sided with us that we can challenge a zero bail and try to increase the bail or impose conditions, but it requires another court process or a virtual process where the police officers have to stop everything and bring that to the duty judge to increase bail. So we did win that battle, which is important for public safety, and we're using it. Officers are using it on the cases that they think they can get an increase in the bail, but we're starting to see that ripple effect. We're starting to see repeat offenders that are escalating. So it is of concern, but we are fighting to balance. Like I said, we have a health pandemic. We don't want a public safety pandemic. So we are very vigilant, trying to balance those two interests. I just feel honored to work with Chief Nisleit and all of my law enforcement partners on this.
Chief Nisleit?
Yeah, just like what Summer's saying, you know, the 2,650 men and women of the San Diego Police Department, you know, we're just honored to serve. Luckily, have a great DA and great partnerships with San Diego Downtown Partnership and all of our other partners. You know, what I really want to talk about is how proud I am of San Diegans who have really been following the rules and cooperating with the stay-at-home order. And we've seen that initially with the reduction of calls for service. People were staying home, people were following the rules. And unlike a lot of big cities across this nation, we have not seen the real increase in violent crime. And the violent crime that we have seen, we've been able to respond very, very quickly and get those folks into custody and then turn the case over to the district attorney's office. So, you know, I'm very blessed to lead this department. I'm very blessed to have leadership and law enforcement through San Diego County, like the district attorney and Summer Stephan. But we're open for business. If you need us, it's either you call 911 or you call our non-emergency number at 619-531-2000. We're just moments away, and we still have all of our officers out in the field. Our investigators, everybody is still working, and we're here to serve you. And again, I'm just, you know, so proud of the way San Diego has responded to these stay-at-home orders and how we've responded to the easing of restrictions that will continue to come until we get back to phase 4 and out. And so, again, we're here to serve you and just appreciate the relationship with everybody involved. So, thank you.
Well, thank you very much to all three of our panelists for making time for us and the 100 people that were here today. We'll be making a recording of this webinar, and it's available on the URL in our chat, and on follow-up email will also go out to participants. Stay tuned for details on our next phase of a Fed and Educated webinar series. And if you have ideas related to today's topic or other resources that would be helpful to you, please feel free to contact us at the Downtown San Diego Partnership. Stay safe, stay strong, and we look forward to working with you all, not only in this stage, but also as we figure out the future of downtown's recovery together. Thank you.